Welcome everybody to today's webinar. Today's program is on Delta Dental, and really is it drilling into your profits and really how practices can reclaim their practice, as well as maximize profitability, value, and today's experts. We've got two of them. Our first expert is JoAnne Tanner, and I've known JoAnne Tanner. She's the owner of Tanner Management, which is a dental consulting agency. And I've known JoAnne for many years. I've always respected her background, which has a military background, and she's combined that with having worked in dental practice, really in the front lines, not just from the outside looking at from ivory towers. She's actually been on the front lines, and has really decades of experience working with practices on everything from office training, staff, operations, finances, planning, transitions. I mean, she really does the gamut, and has contacts. And actually, she introduced me to her to today's other presenter, Trevor. She has tons of contacts in this industry. So she is a wealth of resource for any practices looking to, at any stage of the evolution, whether you're just starting to whether you're trying to transition out, she's got you covered. The second presenter that I have is Trevor Kimball, and Trevor's the president of Integrity Practice Sales, and really one of the largest, practice brokerages, in the state, and I think he's expanding out to some other surrounding, like Arizona, Nevada, and even into Texas. And he has, again, same kind of thing. It lives dentistry, right? Been in the dental industry, grew up. His dad sold his practice. His dad was a dentist. We were talking earlier about his whole family being in the dentist, grandparents, or just a life in the dental industry. And he became a consultant, as early as in like mid 1990s, I think. And I think the main thing with Trevor is again, I think he brings a doctorate degree in what he does, but brings that to a level that I think even the day-to-day layman and practitioner can understand the ins and outs. So I'm going to go ahead and let JoAnne go ahead and get started with today's webinar.
Thank you for the nice introduction, and welcome everyone. Would you like to take control of your practice and take it back and be more profitable by eliminating maybe Delta Dental and those other lower paying PPOs? We get this call many times every week, and we successfully have helped doctors when they're buying a practice to go out of network immediately, as well as establish practices if they want to be out of network. And if that's of interest to you, this webinar is for you.
Yeah, Bill, thank you so much for the introduction. Again, my name is Trevor Kimball. I'm super happy to be here with Bill and JoAnne, talking about Delta Dental. So here we have a young 26-year-old recent dental graduate, John, who's dealing with dental insurance for the first time, and obviously having a blast. Problem? What problem? So anyway, we can move to the next slide. We're talking about the dental practice and insurance reimbursement rates. I had a slide on here about some of the different benchmarks you want. Don't even worry about the slides right now. I'm just going to talk for just a minute. The point is that with those low reimbursement rates, you're going to struggle to have a certain type of practice. And so I want to start by talking about what we call the dentist in the middle. I've heard this term before. And the idea here is basically that as a general practitioner, or even as a specialist, you can really choose how you want to practice dentistry. If you're a private practice owner, you have choices. You've got your own strategic vision for how you want your practice to run into the future. So when we're looking at that, something that I've seen a lot recently, and honestly, we've been seeing for years, is the doctor that doesn't want to make a choice between what we might call like a Nordstrom style practice and a more Walmart style practice. And I'm here to say just off the bat that there's nothing wrong with either of those business models. I've seen some of the most profitable practices in the world. They're the Walmart style. And I've seen doctors do incredibly well with the Nordstrom style. But when you try and straddle that world, it gets a little bit difficult. And, some of the hallmarks of a more Walmart style practice are it's going to have longer opening hours. It's going to be open more days a week. You're probably going to have more than one doctor in there working to accommodate all of these hours. You're trying to see, it's a volume game. You're trying to see lots of patients, move them in and out quickly, be efficient. And that could be a really successful business model. Today, of course, I think we're going to be focusing a little bit more, though, on that other style, that more Nordstrom style. And so if you want that more lifestyle practice, if you want to be working 4 days a week, or 3.5 days a week, or 3 days a week, and still taking home a comfortable income, those fees really matter. And so I had a slide on some overhead percentages, and we like to see we have certain benchmarks for overhead. Obviously, it depends on where you live and some different factors. Some areas there's going to be employees are going to require a higher wage. In some areas, your lease is just going to be more expensive. But what we want to see is that you're producing to that level. And so some of the benchmark, can we even go back maybe 2 more slides? 1, 2, perfect. Lease and facilities, 6 to 10%. And I'm going to move through this quickly, but you can, I think we're going to be sending out this recording and these slides, so you can come back to this, no problem. Lease facilities, 6 to 10%, 6% usually for just your lease itself, 10% maybe for everything, including like janitorial and landscaping, all that sort of thing. Staff, ideally, in the ideal world, general practice, we want to see that around 26%. If you're hitting that, good on you, because let me tell you, most of your colleagues are really struggling to get that number down right now. And it's hard because, these are real people with families and we want to take good care of them. But we also need to be producing at that level. Remember, there's always 2 ways to change a percentage. You don't just have to negotiate a lower lease. You can also produce more and keep that percentage low. There's 2 ways to change a percentage. Supplies, 5 to 7%, labs, 6 to 10%, ideal overhead. And I'm talking ideal here, 55 to 65%. That means you're taking home 45 to 35% of the total collections. So if we move forward, why am I talking about this in an insurance conversation? Why am I talking about benchmarks and overhead and all this stuff? The reason is that when we lower and raise fees, it has a tremendous impact on our bottom line. It's dentistry is funny. There was a thing called the Kodak study. If you look up the Kodak study, that exists only in dentistry. This is math that I can do in Excel. And so it's a really funny, I don't know how this thing called the Kodak study took on a life of its own inside the dental world. And if you Google it, the only places it's referenced are dental articles. So I don't know how that happened, but it was some funny blip, because I was like, oh, I'm going to find the Kodak study. I'm going to read the Kodak study. Where's the Kodak study? And it's like, no, and once I realized I could just reproduce the math in Excel, it was like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. Anyway, all that to say, if you have 70% overhead and cut your fees by 20%, then you need to increase your sales by 300% to profit the same amount. I'll say that again. If you have 70% overhead and cut your fees by 20%, you need to increase sales by 300% to profit the same amount. Now, quick caveat, I love nuance, and I don't like overgeneralizing. So I will say this is absolutely an overgeneralization. If you're actually doing the math here, there's all sorts of other factors at play. Your overhead is really a snapshot of the whole picture. It's not taking into account every minute of your assistant's time coupled with your actual lab fee for that individual crown, and every minute of your front office's time. We're looking at general kind of overarching snapshots here, but the point stands no matter what. If you have a 60% overhead, you cut your fees by 20%, you need to double your sales to have the same amount of profit. So lowering fees instantly hurts your bottom line. Which is your actual take-home money, which is the actual, it's the house you live in with your family. It's the vacations you get to go on. It's what's sitting in your retirement account. That's what we're talking about here. On the flip side, If you have a 70% overhead and raise your fees by 10%, then you need to collect 75% of what you did before for the same profit. So if you were collecting 100K before, but you raise your fees by 10% and you have a 70% overhead, now you only have to collect 75K in order to have the same profit. Similarly, if you're running a 60% overhead and raise your fees by just 10%, then you need to collect now 80% of what you did before for the same profit. So where you were working hard to get that 100K, now you just have to collect 80K in order to take home the same amount of money. Really, what matters here is that take home income. And my point with all this little bits of math and stuff, the big overarching point is every fee change matters. Every fee change matters. When you raise your fees, it can have a direct, fast impact on your bottom line. And when you lower your fees or you accept super low reimbursement rates, it can have a direct and dramatic impact on your bottom line. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to JoAnne, who's going to talk to us now about actual, PPOs, what that world is all about, what kind of a discount you're taking, and how to think about PPOs in your practice.
Exactly, because I know, Trevor, you help doctors when they sell their practice. And if they,
right.
for example, have Delta Dental, that new buyer is going to have a significant fee reduction. So what we're hearing, and I think you'll agree that it's better to consider for the seller, if they're going to be considered, or the existing dentist will be considering selling in the next 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. Would you recommend that they then drop Delta Dental now?
Yes, and with certain caveats. With certain caveats that we're going to talk about soon, which is, if you're a good candidate to drop Delta, if you want to pursue that Nordstrom style practice, then yes, absolutely. If all these things are the case, then I would absolutely recommend going out of network with Delta. And the big thing is what's called transferability. We'll talk about that at the end, but you'll see once we go through this whole process, how that affects your actual practice sale.
Very good. So doctors, if you want to figure out how much discount you are giving to your PPOs, and we need to be able to run some reports. Now, if you have Dentrix, EagleSoft, or Open Dental, we have an app that integrates and supplies this amazing tool to tell us exactly how many patients have insurance. It will tell us exactly how many active patients you have in the practice for the last 18 months. And of those patients, how many have Delta Dental? How many have DentaCal, if there is DentaCal in the practice? So we can accurately determine what is the discount the practice currently has. And this is a very important tool for the doctors to understand, what do I have in my patient mix? So what do you do about it? You said, I want to be able to make more money. I want to be able to have more value in my practice when I'm ready to transition it. Do you want less PPO patients and maybe more fee-for-service patients in your practice? All right. Would you like more loyalty from your practice, from your patients? All right.
JoAnne, can I actually pause for just a second? Can I interrupt for just 1 second? Can we actually just go back for 1 minute to that one slide with the report on it? I just think there's some stuff there that I just want to highlight for everybody before we move on, because I think it really puts into perspective like how big a deal this is when we're talking about these things. Remember those 20% decreases that I was talking about, and how you had to, triple your collections in order to take home the same money based on your overhead? Look at some of these differences here. I mean, and I know we're going to get into this more, but if you look at what the patient amount was and the standard fee, and then that difference column, I mean, $723,288 difference, 51% difference. That's a substantial fee decrease. So I just want to highlight, as we go into this, how big a discount we're actually talking about with these PPOs. It's not 10%, it's not 20% in most cases. This is 50%. 50%.
You're working very
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, please, because
I saw that and I was like, we gotta look at that. We gotta look at it. So anyway, I'm muting. I'm stepping back.
So they're working extremely hard for their money. and they want to be able to increase their profitability. Great. So we talked about what can you do about it? We want to have more fee-for-service patients. I want to make my practice more desirable when I am ready to sell, but I want, even if you're not going to be selling, you want to have more loyalty from your patients. So what could your practice look like? Is it seen just as a commodity? If you are appearing like just another dentist, because then they will go to another dentist that is in network, all right? Would you like to experience less negativity from your patients when you're recommending treatment? So we do have a lot of options. And what about that conversation, will my insurance cover it? You see, doctors, when you're truly fee for service, the patients will pay you, the insurance company pays the patient. Now they have an understanding, and you're not going to get that question very often. So how do you go about eliminating the worst plans? What if you want to eliminate and become 100% fee for service? So you and your team are going to ask, what am I willing to do? And we're going to get in a minute, what don't you do? Will my patients come to see me, to see my hygienist? What does it look like for you and your team? So doctors, the most important question is, how do you differentiate yourself from all the others out there? All right, and it's not because you have a CEREC machine or all the special equipment. Do you truly know your patients? Do you truly care? All right. So one of the things I want you to do, yes, Trevor?
I was just going to ask, I mean, since we're kind of talking through this here, we've used the words fee for service and in network a couple times. Could you kind of break down, just if you're just showing up and, you know, what really is fee for service? What does that really mean in your practice? Does that mean you can't get any benefit from insurance, or, you know, talk us through that a little bit?
Oh, good question. Fee for service means, yes, I'll answer your question there. Fee for service means that the insurance company, we still utilize the insurance benefits for the patients, except the check goes to the patient, especially with Delta. You might be able to get the insurance directly paid by MetLife and Aetna, some of the other ones, but at least here in California, most are Delta Dental, and that check will go to the patient. Fee for service means they pay you either at the time of service, or you might offer a payment plan with an outside company. You can call me for some recommendations. But then the in-network means that you take the assignment of benefits and the check goes to the practice for those significant plans. Is that helpful? And thank you for the chats there on the feature, because we'll get to all of our questions when we have a Q&A time. Before you decide to make any changes, I first of all want you to evaluate your systems, because if your scheduling isn't top-notch, if your overhead is out of whack, maybe you're having high turnover, that is not the time to make any other changes with your PPOs. Make sure that your marketing is working properly, that you're attracting many new patients. So KPI, your key practice indicators, what are you producing? What are you collecting? Where are your accounts receivables? We need to make sure those systems are in place before we proceed. So some do's and don'ts. Do not send out an email or a letter to the patients. Some of you have maybe done that in the past, because the patient interprets that email or a letter that they cannot come here. That is absolutely not true. Take the time to have a conversation with each patient eye to eye. So yes, that means it's going to take a while, at least 6 months. But if your systems aren't in place, if you're not delivering that wow to your patients, you're perceived as just another dentist, they may go to another practice. But if you have that vision for you and your team that you're going to be delivering above and beyond, it's not just about the teeth and the dentistry, it's about the entire dental experience, then you'll have the conversation that goes something like this. Again, knee to knee, eye to eye, most likely from your administrative team, but also possibly from the doctor. You know, Mary, Delta Dental is making us reduce our fees. And we wanted to let you know that we're going to have a change in our relationship with Delta Dental. That doesn't mean you can't come here. In fact, everything will stay the same, except Delta Dental will reimburse you. So we have all these verbal skills in writing for our practices when we work with them on eliminating the delta. So we need you to do your homework, find out how many numbers you have, what patients are in your practice, what plans are you doing, and which ones you want to start eliminating first. And make this decision on the data. I know it's very emotional, it's very stressful, it's very scary. But like Trevor was saying, your overhead is growing. Our dental supply bill is much higher. Wages are significantly higher. And in January, many of you saw a fee reduction from these insurance plans. So that came directly hit on your bottom line. So we'll send you the PDF of this. And I wanted to show you what the checklist would look like as far as where do you start. Too much for us to cover today in one webinar. But basically, you want to take a look at how many times do you do certain procedures? Is my team aligned? Did I do that utilization assessment? Gathering all your fee for services. Also, do you have an in-office membership plan to attract and retain your cash patients? All right. Trevor, anything else to add to this slide?
No, I mean, I think just looking through here, I mean, there's some really great questions in here. We looked at that nice report that JoAnne was able to pull earlier with the different differences. You can run kind of a quick and dirty version yourself. That's free by basically just comparing all of the different fee schedules that your insurances have. And I like to usually pull like the 10 or 15 largest production number codes, and then compare all those fees and look at the whole picture, because it's not just, the crown reimbursement rate is really low, but it might be that the pro fee rate is really high, or whatever. So you have to kind of look at it as a whole, as a collective. And we're getting a question in the chat about what you mean by in-office membership plan. So maybe we want to
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Hernandez. An in-office membership plan is for those patients without insurance, or sometimes you can sign the patients up for, I call it a gym membership for your smile, basically. They pay the practice a set amount per year that includes their 2 cleanings, exams, and x-rays, and maybe a certain percentage off. We need to check in each state if that's allowed to be given to patients with insurance. If you're out of network, if you are in network, it does not apply to have a membership plan unless they're a cash patient. The last item on here, it says, note, do not attempt if you haven't been in this practice for more than 5 years. I've seen it successfully done with an outstanding practitioner. She has great communication skills. She did it after buying a practice after only 3 years. But typically, if you bought the practice just last year and you're a network with PPO, I would wait until everything and you know your patients well. So profitability, as Trevor was talking about, it's fee. That is the key to be fee for service. It's more attractive when you're selling. The average dental school student is graduating with over 300. Okay, many states, it's close to $450,000. So they need a larger practice to receive financing. They want to buy a big practice and a profitable practice. And this is not just for the doctors thinking of selling, it's for the existing practice that wants to be more profitable. Trevor, what do you want to tell us about paying off dental school loans?
Some doctors go to great lengths in order to make sure that they get their loans paid off. And so we hope that you can actually do it through your practice, through the profitability of your practice, and not, resorting to any drastic measures here. Shout out to SF Dental Nerd who had this meme for us today. But anyway, let's talk through some of this a little bit. First, JoAnne, maybe we want to talk about the difference. We had a question about the difference between Premier and PPO.
Yes.
And you've run that before with Premier and PPO. Do you want to talk about that for just a minute?
Absolutely. Years ago, we had Premier only. It was just called Delta Dental. We didn't know that was a Premier. And patients would call, do you take Delta? Absolutely, we take Delta. Well, the fees back then were about $1,000 for a crown. And now maybe you're getting $1,100 or $1,200 All right. But when a doctor starts a second location, buys a practice, or does a startup, all right, they must take the Delta PPO fee schedule. There's also a change in the recent 2023 Delta handbook that anytime you hire an associate, they should be credentialed as well. So again, all of your patients actually are PPO. If you log into deltadentalinS.com and you can go to my patients and you'll see their PPO. Well, I'm Premier. They are honoring the senior doctors by giving them the PPO fee schedule, the Premier fee schedule, although those are PPO patients. So then you're saying, what happens? Well, you see the Premier went away. They're just honoring the Premier fee schedule for now for the existing doctors. Because when Delta is selling their plans to all the employers out there, they had to be competitive. And how did they do that? They created the PPO plan. So they haven't sold a Premier plan in more than 10 years. Is that helpful? And we welcome your chats here. So we also had some other questions about what is the average, the difference between the reimbursement rate. Some of the fees are dropped in half when you go down to the PPO fee schedule. Half off in the fillings, right? And the pro fees are significantly lower. When we help doctors that are buying a practice, we do a fee comparison, and then we take a look on what it's going to mean to your bottom line. Sometimes it's $100,000 less. Sometimes it's $200,000 less. And Trevor, that comes right off the bottom line, right?
That's exactly right. In fact, if you go back one slide, I had this concept that I like to talk about called transferability. And when you're selling the assets of any business, including a dental practice, transferability is this really important concept in valuation. And as a broker, that's something really important to us. So transferability means that functionally, you're not selling what you have, but what you can give to the buyer. I'll say that again. You're not selling what you have, you're selling what you can give to the buyer. So think about it in terms of Delta Premier. You have Delta Premier. You've been practicing with Delta Premier for a long time. You've been receiving Delta Premier reimbursement rates, but the buyer isn't going to be able to enjoy those reimbursement rates. So what you can transfer is different than what you have. The assets that you're able to give to the buyer are a little bit different than what you have, and we have to make an adjustment for that. Now, if you have sort of the way the banks think about it, if you have less than 20% Premier, it's sort of a wash. You're going to be okay. They think you're going to kind of settle into it, and it's going to work okay. If you have more than 20% Premier, then there's some more questions, and maybe we need to make an adjustment there. At the end of the day, it's kind of a math problem if you're a seller going into this and saying, hey, I want to be working and maximizing my take-home income and maximizing what I can get out of a sale. You know, I want to maximize the whole piece. And so you can look and say, all right, well, if I drop here, then I'm going to basically, do I want to think about dropping Delta? Or do I want to just keep this going and the buyer is going to take on that PPO reimbursement rate? But just like JoAnne said, just because the PPO reimbursement rate goes down, your staff fees, you know, what you're paying your staff doesn't go down. Your lease, your landlord doesn't call and says, hey, I heard you took a hit from Delta, you know, accept this 20% courtesy from me. Nope, everything stays the same. And so that is, it just goes right from the top to your take home income. And so that's where it gets kind of ugly. And we hate to see it. Now, again, there are practices that we sell all the time with Premier, and we, you know, put them with buyers. And, you know, JoAnne's 5-year rule is good. It's conservative. I've seen it happen faster. I'm not saying I recommend it. I'm just saying I've seen it happen faster. That's all I'm saying. And so, and in fact, that kind of leads me to an important point that I think we maybe haven't discussed yet, which is, you retaining patients, but also should you be afraid of losing patients? And what does it mean when you lose some patients, but your fees increase 50%? Remember those numbers we were looking at earlier, that was a 20% increase or a 20% decrease. What does a 50% increase look like? How many patients can you lose and still have a positive effect on your bottom line? Because that's what we're looking for, positive effects on your bottom line. JoAnne, do you want to speak to that for a minute?
Absolutely. So for example, if you right now you're getting a $1,200 crown fee, all right, you're going to increase that to probably $1,400. Now you might lose a few patients, but again, that increase is going to drop to your bottom line. You'll become more profitable. I've heard from many clients that they were so nervous they wouldn't go to the front desk right away because they were hearing conversations of patients leaving. But she realized they came back. They didn't understand at first because she may not have taken the time to tell each patient one-on-one. So there's a lot of stories out there. We want to help you be prepared. By the way, for any of the doctors that are thinking of buying a practice, simply because the seller says they're PPO, get a copy of the PPO fee schedule. Now, this is my term. I call it PPO plus, because what we're seeing is Delta was offering a PPO fee for certain doctors a few years ago. And it's actually higher in many times than what the PPO fee schedule are offering now. So be careful if you're buying a practice. As of January 2023, Delta did make some changes in their handbook. And they also changed the Premier fees as well as increased some of the PPO fees. I have a particular client who received an increase, very little. They make you seem like you're getting a benefit. They increased the crowns on the Premier, but they significantly reduced the dentures, the fillings were dropped. They know what they're doing. So we need to help you make some good decisions. All right. Let's take a look at some of the chat questions on here. Hoping my microphone is better. Membership plan. I foresee Delta dropping Premier fees anytime soon? They did drop it just recently, at least here in California. You've probably received the letter early October, and that happened in January. But you can text me later. I'll give you my contact info at the end. Dr. Harrington, good question. If a senior doctor brings on a partner, does the reimbursement drop to the PPO value from the Premier value, or would this remain the same? That's more of a legal question. If you bring in a partner, that means part of the practice has been sold. So check with your attorney. However, you may be able to submit yours directly. All right. But think about it. If you have two doctors together and they're partners, one doctor is now on the PPO and you're still on the Premier, that's a problem, right? It's a mixed message. So if you want, you can text me directly if I can explain that more. There's some other questions about how do I quantify how much I have, again, with our app that integrates with Dentrix, EagleSoft, or Open Dental. If it's not, just don't look at the 1099s. I see that often. And they said, oh, they collected $1 million and the 1099s added up to 250. So that means Delta is only 25%. The 1099 is only what the insurance company paid. It doesn't add up to all the patient copays, the patient collections. And it could be as much as double that. And I'm going to talk about negotiating. It could be double because especially if they do a lot of Crown and Bridge and the patient has already maximized their insurance, there's a higher copay. So the last chat was about negotiating. There are companies out there that say they negotiate. There is no negotiation with Delta Dental. All right, none, zero. All right. Oh, ortho is a whole nother situation. I'll talk about that in a moment. So yes, there are some companies that can negotiate with MetLife and Aetna. Not much in California from what I've heard, because there's plenty of their dentists, but in other parts of the country. All right. Doctor, that's an orthodontist. It depends on the insurance mix that you have. And I would have to point you in another direction to fully get a better question on that. Trevor, anything to comment on ortho practices?
Not off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and look at some of our old deals or our old clients.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and ortho is not protected. They also have a PPO fee schedule. All right. Prosthodontists, they took a huge hit on the Delta PPO as well. Somebody was saying, are the DSOs getting more favorable rates? The DSOs do get a better because they can negotiate. They have power behind them. All right. And
even still, I don't think it's that much better with the DSOs, because I was looking at some different studies recently, and they were talking about, is concentration in dentistry affecting negotiation with insurance, and that was kind of the question of the study. And they went through. This is one of the ADA Health Policy Institute pieces. They went through and they basically said, in many states, even with the DSOs, the insurance is so concentrated that there's really no negotiating with them. There's really not much you can do. You'd have to gather a bunch of practices together, something like the CDA does, but there's very little threats that they can make. Not everyone's going to walk. And so your negotiating, your bargaining position is pretty minimal. I've seen people have success just writing some of these insurance companies, not Delta, of course. Delta is a no-go. There's no negotiating with Delta, but you can occasionally get some bumps with Aetna or MetLife or some of these other ones. That being said, it's going to be a bump from 60% of your UCR fee to 70% of your UCR fee, which is substantial. We talked about what a 10% fee change means, but it's still nowhere near your UCR fees. In fact, JoAnne, do you want to talk for a minute about what UCR is and how that?
Absolutely. The UCR stands for my usual, customary, and reasonable fee. And that is what you should be billing to your insurance company. In most of the software, you can post the anticipated insurance fee in the ledger. So therefore, my forecasted schedule is correct, my day sheet is correct, and magically submit the full UCR to the insurance company. So one, the insurance company knows what the full fee should be, and the patient then sees what adjustment we're making, and then you can see that you don't have to physically make the adjustments, but then it comes up to you, so it's being billed properly. And then the other part was the PPO, the preferred the preferred provider, which is a lower fee schedule than the Delta Premier. All right. So within the Deltas, you can be in network, or you can be the out of network, and you can be then the fee for service when you drop it. We have a question about pediatric startups. The startup would be under the Delta PPO fee schedules. And if you want to try fee for service, that can be challenging for pedo, because if the child then becomes 12 or 14, unless of course there's special needs, they said, well, my dentist, my GP takes Delta. I'll just take the kids there and I'll bring them back to you for any treatment. So pedo is a little bit more difficult, because you see, you as an adult, when you go to your general dentist, you have that relationship with your hygienist. And I love my hygienist. In pedo, it's a little different, because sometimes the parent's not back there and you're not fully engaged in the service. Okay, I hope that answers that, helpful on the question. Good.
I think it's also worth noting, when you're talking about startups, that this big discount we give to PPOs, we give it because they send us patients. I mean, that's the trade-off here. When we think about this big discount, it's kind of like a marketing expense. What we're doing is we're agreeing to accept a lower reimbursement rate for the same dentistry. We're doing the same dentistry for the PPO patient that we are doing for a cash patient, but we are, the trade-off is they send us a bunch of patients. So really, we can kind of think about this as a marketing expense. And, I think that's kind of helpful in understanding what this trade-off is. And that also goes to, and JoAnne touched on this earlier, but I think it's worth repeating. If your schedule isn't full, it's not time to drop PPOs. That's where she was going with all those systems. If your schedule isn't full, it is not time. If you're not scheduled out 2 weeks or more, if your hygiene isn't, pretty chock full and you're like on the cusp of needing to add a day, it's not time to drop. It's time to focus on other aspects of your practice in order to build that up so that you are ready to drop. Once you are full, once your schedule is full, then you can have that conversation about dropping. And this is the same principle here. It's that marketing expense. If you need more patients, then it's not time to drop PPOs. If you have a full schedule, then you can say, you know what, I'm going to cut down on this quote unquote marketing expense and stop accepting these reduced reimbursement rates because I have a full schedule. I can afford to lose some patients. And really, again, this is back to that Walmart and Nordstrom thing, because in the Nordstrom practice, in this fee for service practice, I can slow down. I can have a less busy schedule and still be taking home the same amount of money or more. And I don't know, I've never talked to a dentist that says, I really just want to be busier. I want to just fit more into my day and be working my butt off nonstop all day long. Usually I'd rather do larger procedures, do higher quality, be able to take my time a little bit more, take a breath in the middle of my day, not just keep cranking out dentistry. And so, and again, there's nothing wrong with the Walmart model. Some of the most profitable doctors I've ever seen are on that Walmart model, but it's a different business model. And so if you're especially like a solo practitioner and you want to keep that 4-day week schedule and do that, then maybe it's time to really explore what you can do to help your team grow into this, help yourself grow into it, and really become that Nordstrom practice, that high touch, high relationship practice that's accepting top fees for the top quality dentistry that you're providing.
Exactly. And remember, when the ownership changes, that Delta Premier does not transfer. So there's another thing to think about as far as transferability. That does not transfer. So when the buyer is going to look at that, you are going to get less for your practice versus if you're out of network, you will have many buyers lined up for you because you're already fee for service. Bill, can you look into the chat and see if there's other questions on there or
I'll look into that. One question that I had, and maybe it's because we're really talking about, Delta Dental impact on revenue, profitability, and at what times do you make, like you said earlier, Trevor, at what times do you decide to make the leap, right? It's a scary time, right? It's risky, and people and practices, let's face it, we're all risk averse to some degree, right? We all want to kind of insulate ourselves from that. But I think you pushed it as a concept that insurance is nothing more than these plans are nothing more than a form of marketing. You're just tapping into a way of attracting patients, but it's their patients and it's their type of patients, not always the kind of patient that you would like to, but there's a trade-off, right? So a question that I had for both of you, and I know JoAnne deals with practices on an ongoing basis. One of the little KPI items in the wheel there that you identified was you have to get your marketing in order. And because if we're going to cut these programs, yes, we can raise fees, and that's one aspect of it. But where we got, because there's attrition with any business, right? There's always going to be some level of attrition. What types of marketing or things, if we're not going to be getting them through Delta, what quote marketing things have you guys seen to replace some of these, patients and still get more of that fee for service or the cosmetic or, more profitable types of patients doing the kind of dentistry, I want to do, right? What have you guys seen in the kinds of market? Because it's all changed from the time, JoAnne, when we started doing this stuff, it's completely different, right?
Right. It's all online nowadays, but we need to make sure the internal marketing is working first, because you want those patients that do come in from the external marketing to refer, and then we get the secondary and tertiary referrals. Making sure you have Google reviews, and then we create QR codes for a lot of things for our practices. And we have a QR code to send out for the Google review. And just don't have your reminder system send them out just routinely for every patient seen. I call it take temperature from your patient. In other words, when they come to the front office, so how was your visit today? Because if they were running late and now the patient is going to be late, I don't want to send them a review today. They were having a bad experience for just today. However, when they say, oh my gosh, JoAnne, you're right. Doctor is so nice and your hygienist is the best ever. Thank you so much for your feedback. I'm going to email you, again, not text, because I want them to be able to sit down. I'm going to email you a survey tonight. Would you take a few minutes and share us those great thoughts that you mentioned? Because our doctor reads those answers every morning during our huddle, and we'd love to hear that, have that feedback. Because anytime something changes on Google, be it a review, you reply to the review, you add photos, Google likes you. When Google likes you, you're their friend, and they put you higher up. I could go on about marketing. Bill, we could take an entire hour next time to talk about that. The internal marketing, external, you need to have your online presentation, the NAP, the name, address, and phone number, make sure it's correct. All right. And making sure that your online presence is there. Making sure you have an online scheduling link for your hygiene procedures is also helpful, as well as a link to pay to be convenient and easy for the patients to buy. Good. I'm going to take a look at the chat here to see what other questions. What's that?
Backing up even a little bit more, I think Bill and JoAnne are exactly right. It's that internal marketing to start. It's just, you got to have these things in place to start. And backing it up even further, absolutely asking for reviews. And I love what JoAnne was saying. I call it reputation management. We're up there and there's like a little decision tree, and your front office has to say, how did it go today? Or how was your visit? Or, whatever they want to say. We're sussing out, do we want to ask them or not? Are they going to give us a good review or not? And all of the automated systems, those can work great. And especially once you have what I like to call the backstop, which is at least kind of 50 to 100 reviews on Google. Once you have that, one bad review isn't going to tank you. But if you're sitting there with 4 5-star reviews, 1 2-star is going to tank you. And I hate to say it, but sometimes people are not terribly rational when they're giving these reviews. It might be coming your way, and it might not be your fault. You don't have to be a bad dentist to get a bad review. That's the world we live in. And so what you want is that backstop of reviews in order to make sure that you're prepared for that review coming your way. Also, to address some of the questions in the chat, I'll let JoAnne talk about assignment of benefits and some of that. I think she touched on that briefly earlier, but it's absolutely worth going over and over and over because it's so important. But what percentage of existing fee-for-service should my practice currently have to consider dropping PPOs? I'll let JoAnne answer that too, but I want to just make one point, which is that just because we drop the PPO does not mean we're going to lose all the PPO patients. Just because we drop the PPO does not mean we're going to lose the PPO patients. And that's where it comes back to those systems, those relationships. If we have this conversation with these patients the right way, in business, there's this idea of the switching cost. It's a pain to move from Verizon to Sprint. It's a pain to move from one dentist to another. People don't really want to go have a new patient appointment, get a new set of x-rays, or ask to have their x-rays sent over. Just generally, people want to avoid switching their dentist. They already have, like JoAnne was saying, a relationship with their hygienist. They already have a relationship with the doctor. They don't necessarily want to switch. And so if they can understand the value, and we can communicate the value in them staying, and communicate to them that, hey, there's lots of other patients with this insurance who are coming up with this out-of-pocket difference. There's a lot of other patients that see the quality of what we're doing, that want the care that we provide, that want to continue coming in. That can be super powerful. And so the point is, I'll let JoAnne, again, that the actual question, how many existing fee-for-service patients should my practice currently have to consider dropping PPOs? But the important thing here is those PPO patients aren't lost. Never write them off. in some cases you lose 10%, in some cases you lose 50%. Even if you lose 50%, your bottom line stays more or less the same. And you're still retaining at least half, if not 90% of the patients that you have from that PPO. So just because you're going out of network, all is not lost. And with that, I'll hand it over to JoAnne, but I just think that's a really important point.
Very important point. Thank you, Trevor, for explaining that. How many fee-for-service patients should I have? That's not the issue, because 80% of your patients have insurance. All right. So you become a fee-for-service practice when you drop the plans and people are coming to you, paying you, and some insurances will still give you assignment of benefits. Delta will not. Blue Cross will not, in most instances. The check goes to the patient. So if the check is going to the patient, you need to make sure that we're talking about that relationship, the whole egg experience. Yes, EGG. It's fragile like an egg, because that experience, you can't drop it. It's going to create a mess. And the other question was on assignment of benefits. Most of them will pay the patient, like Delta and Blue Cross that I mentioned. Good. There's some other chat questions there, Trevor.
Yeah, I'll also mention that your front office loves it when the check goes directly to the patient, because they don't have to estimate the insurance benefit. They just get to collect everything up front, and then the patient gets a check from their insurance, and the patient gets to receive a benefit from their insurance that they've been paying for. So they are not coming out of pocket for the whole thing. But from the perspective of your office, they just collect your fee and they're done.
Now let's speak to that a little bit more, because we know the insurance maximum is $1,500. So don't do a financial arrangement on each tooth or each appointment. Say the total treatment plan is $3,000. You'll be receiving a reimbursement check for $1,500. We know that's the max. So when you do it on the larger treatment plan, making that financial arrangement is easy. And as Trevor mentioned, it's a lot nicer for the front, and we're not having to chase the claims.
They like it.
I'm unable to see the chat. So if you could.
Hey, JoAnne, actually, I think this one might be good for both of you, and it will actually help me. On the mention of the CDA's most recent lawsuit against Delta Dental, give some feedback. What's the details on that? How does that impact everyone here?
Yeah, it's going to take many years, in my opinion, to see anything out of that. I'm hoping it's not too little too late, but bottom line, this year, next year, I don't think there's going to be any changes. But Trevor, did you have any other thoughts on that?
I did read the lawsuit. I subjected myself to all 28 pages or whatever of this thing. And it's funny. It's actually kind of interesting reading. The suit alleges that that Delta is basically acting against their own bylaws and kind of against their own organization as a not-for-profit, non-taxable entity. And so the idea is, hey, you guys, they're basically saying your shareholders your board of directors and your C-suite executives aren't supposed to be making this money. You're not supposed to be acting in the way that you're acting. You're supposed to be watching out for the dentist more, and you've done this. So it's almost like it's an internal, you've violated your own corporate charter sort of lawsuit. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer, but that's definitely how I read it. And there was some juicy tidbits in there too, because it's not just CDA versus Delta Dental of California. It's the CDA versus Delta Dental of California, and it names like 9 or 10 of their different board of directors and their officers. And in that, they actually go through, there's a whole couple pages where they say, here's this person, here's how many hours they put into this work, and here's what they were compensated. And so in 2019, their CEO made over $3 million in compensation for running Delta Dental, which is supposed to be this not-for-profit organization. And they have captured a huge amount of the market share. And quite frankly, they're very profitable. They're paying their executives very well. I don't know how you get one of those seats on their board of directors, but I would be happy to take one. Just, sign me up because they're making $250K or so for just doing about an hour of work a week. showing up from time to time, and they're not supposed to take a salary. That's all reimbursement for expenses that they've incurred attending these board meetings. Well, that sounds like a rather lavish hotel stay and a rather lavish board meeting, if you ask me. And so, bottom line, JoAnne's absolutely right. This lawsuit isn't really going to do anything, I don't think, but it is a really interesting legal challenge against the structure of the dental itself. So we'll kind of have to see what happens. The actual, the sort of the relief that they're requesting at the very end of the lawsuit are basically to have them get a slap on the wrist and then anything else that the court may deem appropriate. So I don't know exactly what that means. That 3-month letter was probably a result of the last time the CDA sued Delta and said, hey, you need to give these doctors more warning. And so this time they said, all right, we're giving you your 100 days notice that we're making a change. And so that's when the CDA filed again and said, look, you guys are making this much money. You guys are individually making this much money. You don't need to be lowering the reimbursement rates for your providers. So essentially the lawsuit. It's a riveting 28 pages. I highly recommend it.
Very good.
So we do have
Excellent.
another question because we're getting close to the top of the hour. I'll go ahead and give this to both of you again. Our office is only in network with Delta Dental PPO. Our schedule could use a little help. Do you recommend getting in network with another insurance or focus more on marketing?
Oh, that's a good question. It depends. If you need to add patients to your schedule, you could look at the other insurance plans, especially if they're better than Delta right now, until you get your schedule maximized. Like Trevor was mentioning, being in network can then be a sort of a marketing expense. All right, working on building your schedule for a little while. And then when you're so busy, then you can consider slowly dropping. But in the meantime, work on that experience. If your schedule isn't busy right now, doctor, what is your system when a patient leaves today without scheduling, when they call to cancel and don't reschedule? If you don't have a system in place, you have a huge profit leak, all right? So there are ways to set up automatic follow-ups for that process because you could have potential already and making sure that they're not leaving out the back door. Making sure you have convenient payment plans for your patient, not making them pay immediately. So making sure you're convenient and easy to buy from would also be helpful on your schedule. So again, that gets back to the systems.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in one thing, JoAnne, and I think you get this probably more than certainly most of the other dental professionals I've dealt with, is there is a huge difference in terms of the staffing and in the intake of marketing-driven patients and insurance-driven patients. Okay, marketing-driven patients are very different than people that are on plans. Okay, their motivations are different, and they are, quote, shoppers, right? They're shopping around. I have the ability, I'm not locked into a plan. I'm shopping around. I know, well, my implants, nobody's going to really cover, or orthodontics, a lot of times, whatever they do cover, it's not going to cover much. So I'm going to go to the orthodontist that I choose to. But in marketing, it is also about, when the timing of doing this. Not only do you have to have the systems like the financing and other things in place for them, you got to have the right people, JoAnne. You know that, and making sure that they're acclimated to this marketing population and not getting frustrated when people ask about price or whatever. You deal with that all the time.
And by the way, when you're making that transition to go out of network, and when you're having the conversation with the patient, in a couple of months, you'll start getting calls from patients. Do you take Delta? Doctors, I don't want the front desk to say no.
No.
You respond, I'd be delighted to go over that with you. By the way, my name is JoAnne. Who do I have the pleasure of speaking with? Yes, Mary. how long has it been since you've been seen in our office? I don't say, have you been here before? Because if I say, have you been here before, and they've been coming here for 5 years and I didn't know them and didn't remember them. But if then they say, I've never been there, welcome, you're a new patient. So absolutely, we have a lot of Delta patients that come here. Although you won't find our doctor's name on the Delta list, our patients love doctor. And the only difference is you're going to receive the check. So there's a good way of going about it. We have an entire system that training program developed for doctors, either in office or remote, that we can help you and your team with the verbal skills and how you communicate to your existing patients now. And afterwards, when the phone rings with that question, do you take my insurance? All right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, JoAnne.
I like to think that when patients are calling with that question, they're really asking kind of two things. One is, do I belong here? And can I afford it, or is it worth it? And so by immediately starting the way JoAnne did with, lots of our patients have Delta Dental or whatever, you're immediately telling them, hey, you belong here. This is a place for you. This isn't, some place where we frown on your insurance. We're happy to help you maximize your benefits, et cetera, et cetera. So, so important. We got another question in the chat here about good ways to implement and maintain a payment plan system. Are in-house plans good, or are third-party better? My 2 cents on that real fast is that you're a dental practice, not a bank. Don't be a bank, be a dental practice. JoAnne, you want to take it from there?
Took the words right out of my mouth. I would offer 6 months, no interest with some of the approved payment plans that are out there. And yes, you pay a fee, but I'd rather have 93% of nothing than maybe 100% of nothing in 9 or 10 months, because you may tell the patient, oh, you can pay in 3 months. Doctor, when I look at your accounts receivables, I can tell they're taking more than 3 months to pay. And by the way, when you run your AR report, run it for all amounts greater than a penny, because otherwise it may automatically include the credits. And that's a liability of you either owe the insurance company or a patient the money. So we need to get those AR credits removed so you can truly see how much is in the AR.
Yeah.
Great.
We just got another question in the chat about whether this webinar is going to be available by recording. Bill, do you want to speak to that for a second? I think it is.
Yeah, actually, we're kind of at that point where we're going to be ending the webinar, but yes, we will be sending out a recording. I'm going to edit this out, so we'll streamline as much as we can, but we definitely want to make sure we get all the information.
Yes. Well, I have an ending comment, or actually we'll make it more fun. I'm going to give you a little riddle. 5 frogs are sitting on a log. 4 decide to jump. Go to the next slide for me, please. Okay, that's good. 5 frogs on a log, 4 decide to jump. Doctor, how many frogs are left? Like, what? Well, 5, and then 4 decide to jump. Well, wait a minute. That's 1, right? No, 4 decided to jump. They didn't do anything about it. All right. We need you to do something about this. Just because you make a decision, let's also make it happen. Here's my contact info. That is my landline. I'll also give you my cell if you prefer to text, 916-591-2720. It's almost the same, but you can text me or call me there, my email. And if you have questions, I'd be delighted to speak with you complimentary. Trevor, your contact info is there.
Yeah. This is me again. I'm the president of Integrity Practice Sales. So if you're thinking about selling your practice, head over and you get connected with one of our local agents who would be happy to meet you for a confidential consultation in or near your office. We're here to actually show up and make the process straightforward for you. I've put my office number in there, but also my cell number if anyone wants to text me. And quick shout out, I do also do a little bit of dental consulting myself. But unlike JoAnne, who's nationwide, if you're basically within an hour or hour and a half drive of San Luis Obispo, California, you can also reach out to me if you'd like, and I'd be happy to help. But if you're anywhere else, call JoAnne.
Very good. And I want to give a big shout out to Bill Fukui. Bill, you're very gracious. You're going to do a website analysis. Is that right? assessment?
So we do for any attendees on any of JoAnne's and Trevor's webinars, we will do a complimentary. Normally the consulting that we do is so deep that you don't get this from other digital marketing companies. They're normally, it's about $500 to $700 to do these things. We will do them, and it includes everything from competitors to your Google Business Local, listings, your SEO, any kind of paid advertising you're doing, social media, etc. But it's all digital, and it's complimentary. I don't
Thank you,
have
Bill.
the information on here because I'm really not here to pitch you. I want this to be information, but you can take my cell number. It's 720-837-5641. But yeah, my goal with this is I just want, your attendees to get this good information.
Thank you, Bill.
You bet.
And thank you, Trevor.
Thank you both. Really appreciate it.
Wonderful day, everyone.
Show
Thank
up
you.
here, and to everyone that watches later, thanks so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye now.